When you think of classic American muscle cars, the images of iconic names like the GTO and the Camaro instantly come to mind. But what about the muscle cars that didn't quite make the headlines? The ones that were weird, offbeat, in some cases ahead of their time? The forgotten legends? In this video, we'll be focusing on 12 weird GM muscle cars that time forgot. Number 1. 1965 Chevrolet Corvair Corsa. The 1965 Chevrolet Corvair Corsa may not be the first car that comes to mind when thinking about muscle cars, but it's undoubtedly one of the weirdest. This was no ordinary Chevy. The Corvair, especially in its Corsa trim, was a radical departure from the usual muscle car formula. Instead of the traditional front engine, rear-wheel drive setup, the Corvair was rear engine, and with its air-cooled design, it was one of the few cars to break the mold in the muscle car scene. Chevy introduced the Corvair as an attempt to break into the compact car market, but it quickly gained a reputation for being weird, innovative, and a bit divisive. The 1965 Corsa, however, turned things up a notch with its performance-oriented upgrades. Powered by a turbocharged flat-six engine, the Corsa produced a respectable 180 horsepower in its highest trim. This might sound modest compared to some of the V8 monsters of the day, but considering its small size and rear engine configuration, it packed a punch. What made the Corvair even more intriguing was the unique driving experience it offered. With its rear engine layout, the Corvair felt different from anything else on the road. It had the agility of a sports car, yet still offered a surprising amount of power. The turbocharged engine was tuned for performance, and the Corvair Corsa became an unlikely competitor to the likes of the Mustang and the Camaro in some circles. Unfortunately, the Corvair's weird status wasn't just in its design. Its safety reputation also contributed to its short-lived legacy. In 1965, Ralph Nader's book Unsafe at Any Speed targeted the Corvair for its handling characteristics, which many felt made it unstable. This book more than anything cemented the Corvair's place as an automotive oddity. Despite Nader's criticisms, the Corvair Corsa remains a classic that represents an attempt at something different in the American muscle car landscape. So why did the Corvair fail to maintain momentum? Was it the handling issues, the unique rear engine design, or just a general misunderstanding of what the car could be? One thing is certain: if Chevy had embraced the Corvair Corsa's performance potential more seriously, we might be looking at an entirely different chapter in muscle car history. Number 2. 1969 Pontiac GTO Judge Ram Air 4. The 1969 Pontiac GTO Judge is a legend in the world of muscle cars. But the Ram Air 4 version, while it's often overshadowed by its more popular variants, still this weird GTO stands out as a powerhouse in Pontiac's muscle car history. It was so much more than just an appearance package. The Judge was introduced as a performance model to make the GTO more competitive in the muscle car market. But what set the Ram Air 4 apart was its engine. The Ram Air 4 engine, a 400 cubic inch V8, came with an impressive camshaft and high-performance components that made it one of the most potent engines in Pontiac's arsenal. It was good for 370 horsepower, but more importantly, it delivered gobs of torque that pushed the Judge to 60 miles per hour in just over 6 seconds, a blistering time for the era. What makes the Ram Air 4 GTO weird is the level of detail and attention given to its design for performance. It had a functional hood scoop, a special cold air intake system, and better breathing exhaust manifolds, making it not just a show-off model, but a real street monster. Pontiac went all out, giving the GTO a combination of speed, handling, and visuals that only hardcore muscle car fans could truly appreciate. The Judge Ram Air 4 didn't have the same sales numbers as its standard counterparts, a bit too aggressive for the average buyer. It attracted only true performance enthusiasts. This fact made it even more of a rare breed in Pontiac's lineup. Now the question remains, was the 1969 Pontiac GTO Judge Ram Air 4 a street racer in disguise, or was it too much muscle for its own good? Number 3. 1971 Buick GSX Stage 1. While Buick might be the last thing on your mind when you think of iconic American muscle, the GSX Stage 1 quietly carved out its place in the history books. In a world where big block engines were the standard, the GSX Stage 1 decided to take a different route. Equipped with Buick's 455 cubic inch V8, it was capable of producing a mind-boggling 510 pound-feet of torque and 370 horsepower. This combination of power and torque gave the GSX Stage 1 the kind of brute strength needed to compete with the big boys, like the Chevelle SS and the Pontiac GTO. But here's where the weirdness comes in. Despite its insane power, the Buick GSX Stage 1 wasn't flashy. It wasn't painted in wild colors or decorated with racing stripes. Instead, it was a muscle car in a tuxedo. The GSX had a more refined, understated look with a touch of luxury that set it apart from the other muscle car competitors. It was classy, but still tough enough to take on any challenger at the stoplight. Buick only made around 600 of these cars, and due to their quiet reputation, many were sold without notice. So the question on everyone's lips is, why wasn't the Buick GSX Stage 1 a household name, despite its raw power and rarity? There's no denying that it could have been one of the greatest muscle cars of all time, if it had just caught the right attention. Number 4. 1967 Chevrolet Camaro Z28. The 1967 Chevrolet Camaro Z28 is an absolute gem for the golden age of muscle cars. But it's also one of the weirdest, in the sense that it didn't start as a full-throttle performance machine. The Z28 was originally built to compete in the Trans Am racing series, not necessarily to be a street car that could challenge other muscle cars at the drag strip. The Z28 came with a 302 cubic inch V8 engine, which at first glance seems underwhelming compared to the big block offerings at the time. But here's the thing. The 302 V8 was specifically tuned for high revving performance, with a solid camshaft, a 4 BBL carburetor, and an engine designed to make the most of its 290 horsepower at high RPMs. The Z28 quickly proved that it wasn't about raw size, it was about precision and handling. But what truly made the 1967 Z28 strange was its focus on racing components and lightness. This wasn't the car you'd throw at the drag strip and expect to win straight away. Instead, it had a unique balance of suspension tuning, braking power, and agility that made it a highly effective road car, capable of outsmarting its bigger counterparts on winding roads and tracks. This combination of racing pedigree and street performance made the 1967 Camaro Z28 the perfect car for enthusiasts who appreciated a more tactical approach to muscle. And in the years since, it's become a true icon among those who appreciate engineering over raw power. Number 5. The 1970 Chevrolet Chevelle SS454 LS6. If the 1970 Chevrolet Chevelle SS454 LS6 had a catchphrase, it might be, "More power, more problems." This car was an absolute beast, packed with one of the most intimidating engines ever produced in a factory vehicle. With a massive 454 cubic inch V8, the LS6 engine was rated at 450 horsepower, making it one of the most powerful muscle car engines of its time. But here's the twist. The Chevelle SS454 wasn't just a brute force machine. It also came with a range of performance features, including heavy-duty suspension, a solid rear axle, and upgraded braking components to ensure that all that power could be put to good use. The Chevelle was a heavy car, and its 454 LS6 engine made it a bit of a handful on the road. But for those willing to tame the beast, it was a glorious ride, providing neck-snapping acceleration and a throaty exhaust note that could be heard from miles away. What made the Chevelle SS454 LS6 weird was how it wasn't just built for drag races. This was a muscle car with handling and control in mind. It was a lot of muscle with a dash of finesse, and it was capable of turning heads wherever it went. However, because of its production limitations, only around 4,000 LS6 equipped Chevelles were built, and the Chevelle SS454 LS6 remains one of the rarer and more underappreciated muscle cars from the era. Number 6. 1974 Pontiac GTO Hatchback. The 1974 Pontiac GTO Hatchback is one of the strangest turns in muscle car history, blending performance with a practicality few muscle cars dared to offer. Downsized to a compact design, the GTO ditched its traditional muscle car roots for a more economical 350 cubic inch V8 engine producing 200 horsepower. While it wasn't the tire-shredding beast of its predecessors, the hatchback design gave it a unique vibe that appealed to a new type of buyer. The 74 GTO was truly weird because it was an experiment born at a time when Pontiac was trying to keep the muscle car spirit alive, despite tightening emissions regulations and rising insurance costs. It was a GTO, but not as fans knew it. While it wasn't a complete success, this weird attempt to redefine a muscle car left its mark on automobile history. Number 7. 1966 Pontiac GTO, the first real muscle car. The 1966 Pontiac GTO is often credited as the first true muscle car, a term that would go on to define an entire generation of American automotive history. However, what makes the GTO weird is that it wasn't originally supposed to be a muscle car at all. It was a performance package that Pontiac stuffed into a seemingly normal mid-sized car. The story of the GTO begins with Pontiac's chief engineer, John DeLorean, who decided to put a high-performance 389 cubic inch V8 engine into Le Mans, which was essentially a compact car at the time. This combination of a small car and a big engine was a recipe for a strange, exhilarating ride. The result was the GTO, which was originally available as only an optional package for the Le Mans. What made the 1966 GTO stand out wasn't just the raw power under the hood, it was the muscle car mystique it created. With 335 horsepower, or more depending on the engine option, the GTO could easily outrun most cars on the street at the time. Yet its relatively modest, non-aggressive styling made it an under-the-radar performer. The Pontiac GTO didn't shout for attention, it simply delivered the goods. The fact that the GTO helped define the muscle car era, while also managing to remain somewhat subtle and understated, is what gives it its weird charm. It wasn't flashy, but it was a game changer. By the end of its first year, it had established Pontiac as the go-to brand for performance vehicles. Number 8. 1971 Chevrolet Vega GT. If you're thinking that the Chevrolet Vega doesn't sound like a muscle car, that's because it wasn't, at least not initially. The 1971 Chevrolet Vega GT is one of the most bizarre entries in this video, known primarily for being an economy car. The Vega GT was a strange attempt by Chevrolet to create a performance vehicle out of a lightweight compact car. The Vega's claim to fame as a muscle car is its lightweight construction, which gave it a distinct advantage in terms of handling. While other muscle cars of the era focused heavily on raw power, the Vega GT had more agile and nimble handling than most of its contemporaries. Its 2.3-liter four-cylinder engine wasn't exactly a powerhouse at 140 horsepower, but it was the first production car to feature an all-aluminum engine block, making it an innovation that Chevy had big hopes for. The Vega's weirdness, however, comes from its ambitious goals to combine economy and performance. While its small engine wasn't enough to compete with the likes of the Mustang or Camaro, the Vega GT attracted attention for being a small, sporty car with unique features. By the time it was realized that its performance capabilities were lacking compared to full-fledged muscle cars, the Vega's moment had passed. Despite its mixed legacy, the Vega GT left a mark on automotive history for being one of the oddest attempts at combining muscle car performance with a more compact, efficient design. Number 9. 1976 Chevrolet Laguna Type S3. The 1976 Chevrolet Laguna Type S3 was one of the weirdest muscle cars in GM's lineup, primarily because it was an odd blend of personal luxury and muscle performance. Laguna Type S3 was designed to be a high-performance coupe, but it came in a body style that looked more like a personal luxury car than the typical muscle car of the era. At first glance, Laguna Type S3 looked more like something you'd find in a suburban driveway rather than at the drag strip. Its long, sleek lines and smooth design weren't the typical aggressive look associated with muscle cars, but underneath all that refinement was a 350 cubic inch V8 that could churn out up to 245 horsepower. The Laguna was far from a performance powerhouse compared to the Chevelle SS or Camaro, but it had a certain charm. What made the Laguna Type S3 so strange was its attempt to straddle the line between muscle and luxury. It had the performance of a muscle car, but it offered a more refined driving experience, with features like bucket seats, a plush interior, and power windows. It wasn't as brutal as other muscle cars, but it wasn't a slouch either. The Laguna was designed for buyers who wanted a car that was both stylish and capable, offering a slightly softer, yet still powerful muscle car experience. While the Laguna Type S3 didn't achieve the legendary status of its peers, it remains a weird, underrated piece of GM's muscle car history, particularly for drivers who appreciate the idea of blending power with comfort. Was the Laguna Type S3 the ultimate muscle car for people who like luxury with a side of horsepower, or just a confused design that couldn't fully commit? Number 10. 1970 Oldsmobile 442 W30. Oldsmobile's 442 had long been a name synonymous with performance, but the 1970 Oldsmobile 442 W30 took things to an entirely different level. What makes the W30 unique and weird is how it combines advanced engineering with a certain underdog status in the muscle car world. The 442 had always been a standout muscle car, but the 1970 W30 variant pushed it into the realm of true performance legends. The W30 option, which was available on the 442, featured an upgraded 455 cubic inch V8 engine that churned out 370 horsepower. Oldsmobile made several subtle but important changes to the car's design. Things like a functional hood scoop, a unique air induction system, and a beefed up suspension to handle the increased power. It was the kind of muscle car that wasn't just fast in a straight line, but handled with surprising finesse. Despite its performance credentials, the 442 W30 never garnered the same attention as muscle car icons, like the Chevelle SS or the GTO. However, it's found a following among collectors and enthusiasts who appreciate its oddball status in the GM lineup. It wasn't the loudest or most well-known muscle car of the era, but it certainly proved that Oldsmobile had a unique vision of what a performance car could be. Number 11. 1971 Chevrolet Monte Carlo SS 454. The 1971 Chevrolet Monte Carlo SS 454 may not be the first car that comes to mind when you think of classic muscle cars. It's one of those hidden gems that deserves more recognition. With a massive 454 cubic inch V8 engine under the hood, this full-size beauty had the power to back up its sleek design, pushing out 360 horsepower and a jaw-dropping 500 pound-foot of torque. The Monte Carlo was more than capable of leaving other cars in the dust when it needed to. But what really set it apart was how it combined muscle car performance with the kind of luxury that wasn't common in the performance world. While cars like the Camaro or Chevelle were stripping down for maximum speed, the Monte Carlo was built for cruising comfort, with power windows, plush seats, and even air conditioning. It was a car for people who wanted more than just speed. They wanted a ride that could perform and offer a refined, comfortable experience on the road. The SS 454 was a true dual-purpose vehicle, perfect for both long, smooth highway drives and sudden bursts of power when you stepped on the gas. Despite its impressive engine and unique blend of luxury and muscle, the Monte Carlo didn't quite fit into the muscle car scene of the early 70s. It was a bit heavier and bigger than its counterparts, which made it feel more like a luxury cruiser than an all-out racer. With its higher price tag and less aggressive image, it didn't attract the same attention as the Chevelle SS or the Pontiac GTO, which were more in line with the raw power and attitude people expected from a muscle car. Number 12. 1971 Chevrolet Corvette ZR2. The 1971 Chevrolet Corvette ZR2 isn't your typical muscle car. In fact, it's one of the weirdest vehicles in the GM muscle car lineup, blending raw power with cutting-edge technology in a way that many had never seen before. The ZR2 was a special order, limited edition package designed to make the Corvette even more track capable, and it did so with impressive results. At the heart of the ZR2 was the 454 cubic inch V8 engine, which could deliver 425 horsepower. But the real key to the ZR2's weirdness was its performance package. This wasn't just a Corvette with a bigger engine, it was a race-ready version of the iconic sports car. The ZR2 came with heavy-duty suspension components, improved cooling systems, and special handling packages designed to give it superior performance on both the street and the track. Despite its incredible performance capabilities, the Corvette ZR2 was extremely rare. Only about 12 of them were produced in 1971, making it one of the rarest and most sought-after Corvette models of all time. What makes it weird, though, is how it combined the Corvette's reputation for speed with a level of engineering sophistication that went beyond most muscle cars of the time. It wasn't just about making a fast car, it was about making the most well-engineered, track-worthy car Chevrolet could offer. Which of these GM muscle cars surprised you the most? Do you think any of them deserve a second chance in today's performance car world? Let us know down in the comments section below.